So it's been an extraordinary week and a remarkable day on the political front, and quite a number of developments that have been taking place. And today, I suppose, all eyes were on Union Buildings and the office of the President of the country as he tried to explain his side of the story, saying that, look, I don't understand what's going on here. I've done nothing wrong. I don't understand why my party is asking me to leave office in the way that they have. And so if he doesn't resign this evening, he's going to be facing a vote of no confidence tomorrow. In the meantime, the markets have pretty much accepted that he's going to go. And the rand today rallied to levels we haven't seen since 2015. 11 rand 72 at the moment, and that's up 2% on the day. To help make sense of this is Azar Jammine, Chief Economist at Econometrics. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, so, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa went to Davos and he made all these sort of kind of pronouncements of what he wants to do. And it seems that the more it looks like he'll take over, the markets are responding to this.
There is no doubt that the markets are perceiving that South Africa is about to have a tectonic sea change in environment that is now setting the economy up for a better experience than what we have had under the Zuma regime. And this arises from the fact that Ramaphosa himself is, he was standing at the foreshore next to Mandela when Mandela was released. He's been at the game a long, long time. He was the head of the National Union of Mine Workers. He helped to bring about peace in Northern Ireland. People forget that. They also forget that he had more than a decade of as a leading businessman, and then was appointed chairman of the National Planning Commission, which formulated the National Development Plan. So he knows the structural weaknesses and strengths of the South African economy extremely well. And finally, he's been deputy president for the last 5 years. One can't think of a better candidate to lead the country.
All right, so markets are responding positively, business is optimistic, but just putting a guy in there is not going to shift things. Are we saying that there have been people that have pressed the pause button that are going to say, okay, now we have a bit of certainty in terms of who's in charge, and that it looks like we can put money into the pot now?
Without a doubt, that is the case. The really essential reason why Ramaphosa needs to become head of state is in order to make changes in the cabinet, to possibly reduce the size of the cabinet to effect massive cutbacks in expenditure, and to get going with the restructuring of state-owned enterprises and to appoint new members of boards there and new management. Over and above that, to start fighting back on corruption and state capture, which stands to save the economy up to 10% of government spending each year compared with what we have had in the past. It is huge.
All right. President Zuma hasn't been found guilty of anything, but was it that urgent for him to go, and to go immediately? Absolutely.
The longer he delays, the longer it will take to restructure the cabinet and to get people into positions to start putting right what has gone so wrong for the last several years now under Zuma's leadership.
All right. So what's the first thing that Cyril Ramaphosa has to do?
The first thing he has to do is to get rid of certain and quite a few very incompetent and corrupt cabinet ministers, and to replace them with more competent people. Secondly, to do the same with state-owned enterprises. Thirdly, to ensure that some of the legal processes necessary to enact some of the fight against state capture start getting underway.
Moody's is watching us, Fitch and all those people, and they're making up their mind about us now. So if President Ramaphosa delivers his SONA, what does he need to tell the international community again?
I think more than the SONA, and I think there'll be clues in the SONA about this, is next week's budget, to tell the international community, who lost hope when Malusi Gigaba tabled the medium-term budget policy statement in October, they termed that the abandonment of fiscal discipline. Ramaphosa needs to oversee a return of confidence that fiscal discipline is in fact still going to be pursued with alacrity in such a way as not to allow our public debt to go crazy, and to restore the confidence that international investors have that South Africa will not go insolvent.
Do you need a new finance minister?
I do believe we need a new finance minister, even though the present one seems to have turned 180 degrees in terms of his affiliations. The fact is that people do not trust him because of his earlier affiliations to the Gupta family, and the fact that he oversaw the start of the decline in the level of governance of state-owned enterprises as Minister of State-owned public enterprises 5-6 years ago.
All right. So, I mean, it's so much happening and so quickly. Let's assume that Cyril Ramaphosa is appointed president. Markets will come down and we'll get back to normal. Is that kind of what happens, or do we now start looking to other areas for turbulence? He's going to have
to encounter quite a lot of challenges. Yeah. The first and foremost is, if he's going to fight back on excessive government spending, he's got to clamp down on public sector remuneration. Immediately that sets him up for tensions between himself and those who have been his most vehement supporters recently, namely COSATU, and who basically presides over public sector unions. Secondly, he's going to have to try and persuade the working class and the poor that an increase in VAT even though it will hurt them, has to happen.
All right, we'll chat next week a lot about the budget, but 11.72 at the minute. Can this rand improve, or is it going to calm down?
You have to bear in mind that if you look at the history of the rand over the last 30 years on a real trade weighted basis, it is still not that expensive. If you calculate the average level at which it has traded over the last 30 years, we would currently be at around 12.50 rand. So 11.70 is not excessive. It's just that we had got so used to tremendously low levels of 15 and 16 and 17 rand to the dollar. However, at current levels also, there are some people who are bleeding, especially the mining companies, make no mistake, exporters. But it's got the flip side, that we're looking at inflation coming in a lot lower than expected, and that could pave the way for interest rate cuts, which is good for the consumer as well, and for investors.
All right, Azar Jammine, it was a pleasure talking to you. We'll have a chat again next week, I'm sure, because a very important budget, and perhaps one of the most important, is going to be delivered. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Pleasure.
All right, that was Azar Jammine speaking to us about what looks like could be a very positive future if the politicians get the next day or so right. Let's take a quick